Hello, I'm Pamela Davis. Welcome to episode 82 of the Well Done Life podcast. Hello, and welcome back to episode 82 of the Well Done Life podcast. I'm your host, Pamela Davis. If you are new here, hey, how are you? Welcome. I am so glad that you are here this week. I hope you stay a while. If you've been here before, you guys know I love you deep, and I really appreciate you for continuing to support me. Thank you for coming back. Before we get started with this week's episode, I like to make sure that I lay a good foundation. I want to make sure you know why you're here, and I want to make sure that you feel loved because we're creating a safe space. So part of my housekeeping with creating that safe space is I like to make sure that we build our foundation on solid ground. And for those of you who've been around a lot, you already know that foundation is built on clarity and love. Because, hey, you got to know why you're doing something in order to be able to receive the love that's being shared with you. So first and foremost, I want to make sure that you understand that the Well Done Life podcast is a safe space. I created this space for women because I really do feel as women are the foundation of society that we need opportunities where we can share our stories, where we can learn and grow from each other, and just truly be transparent without fear of judgment. Because each of us have experiences, the good and the bad and the ugly, that we have learned from, and that by being honest about that and sharing that out into the atmosphere, we have an opportunity to change somebody else's trajectory. We have an opportunity to help someone be encouraged who may be going through something very similar to what we've experienced. Or we can actually maybe help someone avoid some of our missteps and help them be better and grow on the process. So that's what the Well Done Life is all about. So now that we kind of understand why we're here, I want to make sure that you truly do understand that everything that we will do is based in love, because I really do believe love is the root of everything. So with that, I'd like to make sure that I am sending out prayers to each and every one of you. One, because I feel like we don't pray enough for each other. And then two, because I really feel that when one or more people kind of come together in prayer, when we put positive energy into the atmosphere, we will receive it. You will receive it. And that's my goal. That's always going to be what helps. That's my love language, to be able to encourage and share and support someone else. So this week, I want to make sure that I am sending each of you prayers of peace. I am also sending you prosperity. I'm sending you prayers of empathy, prayers of hope, just prayers of strength, because yes, we're still in the middle of the panini, as I prefer to refer to the panorama pandemic that we are still dealing with. Even though, cases may be going down, we're still in it. We still have a ways to go before I think everybody is 100% clear. So definitely praying for everybody's health and their mental well-being, because it can be kind of tricky, and I do see a lot of emotions flying out here in these wild panini streets. So be careful, and definitely I'm sending you, like I said, prayers of peace and protection and health and prosperity, because I know, again, the world can be crazy, but I definitely hope that you are able to achieve all the things that you desire and have many great returns and abundance sent to you. So that's why I like to do it, because, again, this is about love, and love is what's going to help us build this safe space together. So now that we've kind of done our housekeeping things, let's kind of start to dive into this week. It has been crazy. I have never seen a fourth quarter start like this. It is just like rapid fire. I can't believe, if you think about it, we're almost like in the middle of October, and I have people already asking me about what I'm doing for the holidays, for Christmas and New Year's, and I'm just like, whoa, hold up just a second. But, just trying to navigate it all in between work and stuff. I have to admit, for myself, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed this week. It has been bananas, but I feel really blessed to be in this space right now with you. It is Friday night, October the 8th at approximately 9:16 p.m. And I'm really encouraged. I feel at peace, probably one, because my work day is over. And I'm really excited about Saturday and Sunday because yay, cheers to the freaking weekend. But at the same time, I'm getting an opportunity to sit down and talk with you guys. And that's always one of the highlights of my week. So, like I said, feeling a little overwhelmed, but glad to be here. I want to thank everyone also for their support of last week's episode. I really appreciate it. I definitely wanted to do that as kind of like a part two to Sitting With Me is a part two to Unending Abundance. I feel like we've kind of like been on a series of preparation, just kind of like preparing for our blessing, understanding the time that we are in, as well as in regards to surrendering and knowing just as we're in this time of preparation and getting ready for our next season, definitely being comfortable enough within ourselves to sit back and surrender to the process. Well, giving up some of the control can always be difficult for many of us. And then diving into unending abundance, kind of like that being like a part two-ish part of it, because again, you have to be able to surrender in order to be able to acknowledge the process that you're in and open yourself to those unending abundance so that you can realize that in spite of all the challenges you may face, there are limitless blessings coming your way. You just have to stay patient. And then kind of last week was Sitting With Me. And in Sitting With Me, that just was more of a conversation I wanted you to have, because I know for myself, I am finding it very critical. As I said, fourth quarter is definitely starting off quick, and I have to sit with myself. I need to make sure that I keep my emotions and everything in check, that I am doing the work on myself, because you can do all the self-care that you want. You can do really, you can have all the self-care, you can romanticize your life, you can do all of those things. But if you're not sitting with yourself and flipping a coin and dealing with the sides of yourself that need work, the sides of yourself that just aren't as together as we know that they should be, all you will have is a lot of massages, a lot of really cute stuff in your house, but you're still going to be an empty shell because you haven't done the work within who you are. So I really hope, again, that you got an opportunity to listen to those episodes. I will make sure that I link them in the show notes, because in regards to this week's episode, it was funny. I felt like this actually kind of came into play Tuesday for me. I once a month, I sit and guest with another podcast. It's Conversations with a Black Girl and a White Girl with Tiffany and Tita. And Tiffany and Tita, obviously a Black girl is Tita and a white girl is Tiffany, are a wonderful podcast that I've actually featured on this show, talking about how they came together to try to help shed a light on systemic racism, as well as also shedding a light on bias and white privilege. Tiffany, she is from a native of Australia, but she is here in the United States now. And Tita, they met at a conference and they just hit it off. And in the course of that time frame, they have built a beautiful friendship that is built on such honesty and love and support of each other, and this common goal to help kind of dispel some of the systemic racism that transpires in our society, the myths about it, and at the same time show how you can really build true allyship together. So it is a really great podcast. I will definitely link it. But like I mentioned, once a month, myself and another wonderful person that I've met, Erin Birch, who is more of a body whisperer. She really is in tune with like the chakras and your spiritual alignment. Wonderful woman. We get together, two Black girls and two white girls, and we have conversation around things that are going on right now. Current events, different subjects as it relates to women, as it relates to race, just being able to, again, build that bridge, that safe space where we can have honest and true conversation with each other. So this week, when we met for our monthly episode, the topic this time was around voices, because Erin mentioned that she felt like her voice was being stifled. And of course, when she was speaking about that, she did relate it to her energy. She specifically was talking about her throat chakra, and she had been watching The Handmaid's Tale. And it's funny because when the last time we had met for the previous month, we wound up talking a lot about what was going on in regards to the abortion law changes and everything. So there is a lot of complexity going around in regards to voices being stifled. And so when we were having that conversation, it really made me think a lot about the previous episode, Sitting with Me, and how, as a part of us sitting with each other, sitting with ourselves, one thing that we do unconsciously, I think, is sometimes we don't address the traumas that we have experienced in our life. And a lot of times when we don't, address those traumas that we have experienced in our life, we transfer that trauma onto other people. So, and the reason I say that is because, like I said, in how it relates specifically to Aaron and the throat chakra and voices, I think a lot of times for women, our voice gets stymied because of the fact that we have not dealt with our trauma. And a lot of times that when we get stymied, obviously, with our voice, and we're not able to clearly articulate what we are feeling, what we are thinking, we then at certain times can lash out in ways where people don't understand specifically why we are feeling a certain way or communicating a certain way. And I'm going to give you an example because essentially, I think a lot of times, and one of the things that we talked about on the podcast was how, as women with our voice, it is very difficult, especially as a woman of color, in a lot of instances in corporate structures, to be able to express yourself without sometimes coming across like the angry Black woman. And I say that as from personal experience because when I speak on a particular subject, I can be very animated. I can be very passionate about it. And a lot of times I found in corporate structures, when I am dealing with people who are not of color, it can come across like I'm being defensive. And when that in turn causes me, and I'm again just speaking about myself, that in turn has caused me to close up and to try to compartmentalize my energy, or to be extremely cautious about the words that I say and the messages that I communicate, because I don't want to offend. And I find sometimes that my true thoughts and words get stymied because I am more focused on making sure that my information is pleasing and is received versus, in my mind, being more direct, saying what I mean and meaning what I say, which is really what I try to live by. But I find that when I am doing that in certain situations, especially in corporate structures, that sometimes that can be misinterpreted and it can come back to bite me. So it causes me, of course, to take that back in and then to marginalize what I'm saying, which in turn creates animosity and resentments in me because I'm not able to clearly articulate the way I want to. And I don't feel that allows me, like I said, to be able to exercise my voice in the right way. So that was just one of the examples that we talked about. And I wanted to just share mine because that's an experience that I have had. And it is definitely something that creates a frustration in me. And if I think about it, that frustration, it really creates a trauma in me because that is something that I have to admit I have been triggered back since I was young in regards to always being able to make sure that my voice was pleasing. I don't really know if I've mentioned this before, but my first actual memory of my voice being stymied in that way was when I was in the first grade. And at that point in time, when I was in the first grade, my teacher put me in special education classes for speech because she felt that my speech was inappropriate. Let me say that again. My first grade teacher at the time, put me in special education because she felt my speech was inappropriate. And when I say my speech was inappropriate, it wasn't that I had a speaking impediment at all. It was the fact that she was not comfortable in the way that I was speaking to her. And I mean, full transparency, I'm not young, or I'm not too young. I'm a little seasoned. And that was probably, that was like in the 70s, the late 70s, early 80s. Late 70s, really. Sorry, I digress. But anywho, And so she put me in special education because I had gone to school and told her that my parents told me that I didn't really have to listen to you because my parents were pulling me out of here, out of the school anyway, because my parents and I and her, we just did not see eye to eye. Like literally, I don't know what the teacher had against me, but essentially she wrote on my report card, and I still have the report card. She told my parents that she did not feel that I would make it through high school. Like I would never graduate from high school. I mean, what teacher tells a parent of a first grader that their child is never going to make it through high school? Like, I'll never graduate. I will literally never amount to anything because I was not able to clearly articulate my words in an appropriate manner. So she put me in special education. And back then I think my parents did what they could, but like my mom said, it had just gotten to the point where she was like, I was just like sick of having to go to the school to deal with issues. And my parents were like, they didn't really have the bandwidth of moving me during those time periods because, like I said, it was like in the late 70s, early 80s. So, really things were just getting a little bit more desegregated. And so it just was a different kind of situation. So essentially, I had to, endure that. And I carried that trauma with me all through my educational years. And if I think about it, that is something that I always think about as I'm interacting. So it is something, and it is something, if I were to look back now, that I guess I have healed from in a sense, because I do find that I'm a lot more direct, a lot more forthcoming about what I'm saying as I've gotten older, and I just don't care. But at the same time, I will always reflect back on that because, again, that was a trauma. So I say all of that to say that it is just very important that as we are sitting with ourselves, we deal with our trauma. And I think that as women, all of us probably, if we sat and thought about it, we could recall points of trauma for trigger points for us when we are going through life even now. And when you're dealing with yourself and you're trying to grow to your next level, it becomes extremely important for you to be able to identify those trigger points and to be able to deal with them because they can stymie your voice. They can prevent you from being able to articulate yourself in the way that you need to be able to articulate yourself. And so I wanted to bring that up because, again, that was an example of how our voice can be stymied. Another thing that we kind of alluded to and we really didn't get a chance to talk too much about was how, if we think about it, hurt people really are the ones who hurt people. We literally are in a cycle now, as we are seeing of if you think about it, of trauma. And a lot of times, all of these people are acting out in these ways because they are coming from a position of hurt. Yes, I do think that obviously some things that people are dealing with in relation to how they're speaking, it comes from the media, it comes from what's being fed on social media. People get indoctrinated with content and information because, unfortunately, we become such a digital society that we don't really always seek out information. But I think a lot of it, though, in regards to how we support each other, how we deal with each other, it all comes from, or the lack thereof of how we deal with each other and support each other, comes from some type of trauma. And with that trauma, we have to deal, like I said, we have to deal with ourselves. And I wanted us to talk about it today because as women, it is so important that we deal with our trauma because we know that hurt people hurt people. And we know also, though, that we need each other. Whether we believe it or not, we need each other in order to be able to advance and to grow. And I hate to definitely say this, but I'm just going to really keep it honest. There are some women who don't like women. And I'm not talking from a context of sexuality. I'm talking from a context of the fact that some women are uncomfortable or they are jealous or they are just not clear on why women need to advance to certain levels. There's a lot of opportunity for judgment in regards to how much women are able to do and to make. Or if you see it, you think about there's judgment in regards to how women express themselves sexually. There's just a lot of women who just literally in certain aspects of it just don't like women. And that's not something that's new. That's a generational thing. It really is. It's just unfortunate. You see it in a lot of different aspects of our history, that there are just women who have just fought against other women. And yes, some of it does have to do, obviously, with certain people who just may not be comfortable if we're relating it specifically to women in regards to race. There are some women who just don't like women of color, or because again they're uncomfortable with it, they don't understand it, or they've been fed and indoctrinated with information that makes them believe that women are one set way, women of color are one set way. And this country is built on xenophobia, which is the fear of what is not like you. And I'll make sure I put that definition in the show notes. But that really is, that's part of our DNA. But if we think about it, a lot of times, like I mentioned, a lot of the discernment or the concern when women start to relate each other, or the lack thereof, comes from the fact that a lot of women just don't like women. Some women are jealous of other women. Some women, like I said, they are resentful. But if you think about the roots of those things, jealousy, resentment, animosity, all of them, they all tie back to hurt. They all tie back to trauma. So I wanted to talk today about the fact that as we are sitting with ourselves, as we are growing, as we are learning, as we are evolving, as we have decided to sit down and flip the coin, because remember, there's only so much self-care and so much romanticizing your life you can do when we are trying to live our best life. We have to talk about, what are we doing to heal our traumas? Because if we don't heal our traumas, those traumas, again, will make us empty, but they will also make us resentful. And that those traumas will also stifle our voices. So I wanted to talk through that a little bit, because it is something that we have to do, and we don't talk enough about it. We always are talking about, mental health and those things. And that is a part of your mental health. Healing your trauma, that's a key integral part of it. But, I think a lot of times people will go through life and feel like, well, I feel emotionally good. I feel mentally good. But I still don't, but they still haven't really addressed the trauma. Because if you have a lot of resentment and animosity toward other people on baseless reasons, is that really based upon your thought, or is that based upon somebody triggering you because of something that occurred in your life? Something that it makes you hurt or resentful or unsure because you don't feel confident in the woman that you are. So I wanted to talk about that because we've all been there. And everybody at some point in time has been envious or jealous or, unsure. And we have manifested that feeling and transferred it on to someone else. We all have. I mean, hey, like I said, we've all kind of figured out there's nobody who's got this thing mastered. So we have to be able to confront that side, because again, you stymie voices, you stymie your own voice because you're not really allowing yourself to heal. You're not allowing yourself to be who you truly are. But then when you transfer your animosity, we transfer your fears and your suspicions on someone else, you judge that person. You put that negativity into the atmosphere, and it affects everyone, not just you. And it allows people to then feed onto it. And then they become also have animosity toward that person. And then you can actually create a problem when there really was no problem that occurred. It all centered with you. So a lot of times when you're in those situations, like I said, you got to get honest with who you are. You have to deal with your trauma. And when you're dealing with your trauma, you do have to think about, okay, the situation that occurred, is it so deep that maybe you can't resolve it on your own? That's always, to me, the first thing to think about when you're dealing with a trauma, because it's easy to remember it once you focus on who you are and the past, that the moments where you are triggered. You allow yourself to think about it, because I know for myself, when I deal with my traumas, I compartmentalize my pain, as I think I've told other people. So when I compartmentalize my pain, it is very important for me when I open certain boxes, I have to make sure that I am in a clear enough mental space in order to do that. But I also, before I even got to that level, I had to ask myself, could I deal with this on my own, or did I need to seek out help? And I've talked about this before. There is nothing wrong with seeking out help. I personally think more people need therapy because no matter how many friends we have, how much family we have, sometimes it is easier for us to tell our deepest, darkest things to someone who we don't know every day, who doesn't have an opportunity to make us feel judged. So you have to assess where you are in the journey for that. So let's just say you have decided that you are going to move forward with a therapist. One, that's great. You're moving forward with a therapist. They will show you how to unpack and deal with your trauma and your pain. But then let's say for number two, you've decided, you know what? I'm not going to. I'm going to try to face this on my own. Okay, great. You can possibly do that. So let's say you start to face your trauma and you start to give life to your trauma. You write it down if you have to. You make the vision of it plain, you speak it, whatever you do to invoke it back into you. Once you've invoked it back, be it through writing, through speaking, whatever you choose to do, you have to take it for what it was. Like literally. You have to acknowledge the trauma and understand what you experienced, give it the words that are necessary, and then you have to look at it like, I can't change it. I couldn't change it. I couldn't change what happened. I couldn't change how I felt in that moment. There was nothing that I could have done differently because your trauma is unique to each individual. And whatever may have happened in that situation that made that trauma occur, you have to be open enough to acknowledge it and realize that there was nothing that you could have done to make that situation different. It happened. So when you acknowledge it and you realize that it's happened, then you have to do something even bigger. You have to decide that, you know what, I'm going to forgive myself for not being able to change it. I'm going to forgive myself for not being able to prevent it from happening altogether. You're going to forgive yourself for that completely. Because again, that is a trauma. And no matter what that looks like, that is something that happened to you, and you have to understand it happened to you. It's not your fault. And so let's say you're starting to work through that. And I'm going to be honest, I think that when that starts to happen, that's where it can get tough because it's very hard when we are replaying the trauma in our mind to be able to move through and forgive ourselves. So I would say if you are struggling with that, or you are holding on to a trauma that you just don't feel like you're able to forgive yourself from or release yourself from, I really think that you should consider going into counseling because trauma work is hard work. It can stem, like I showed you and that's just a light example of trauma for me, that it can start from a very young age. And if you think about it, how you're processing those pains, and it can be so varied in nature, it's okay to admit that maybe you realize, you know what, I thought I could carry this alone, but I can't carry it alone, and I need to seek out help. And I'm just going to, again, be an advocate for therapy because I just think it's so important, especially as a woman of color, because a lot of times we are not taking those extra steps to get therapy because of judgment or fears or perceptions around therapy itself. Get the help that you need because you deserve it. Understand that you are doing the work and talking through this trauma and trying to heal yourself because you are trying to be the best version of yourself possible, and you deserve to be able to help. You don't have to be Superwoman to do everything on your own. That's not necessary. Sometimes it's okay to get help. So I just, again, wanted to always throw that counseling caveat out there because I just think it's so important. But let's say that you feel like, okay, I can forgive it. I can move through it. I think depending on the level of trauma, you have to decide how you're going to close that, how you're going to decide, I'm going to move through this and never deal with this again. And again, that is going to be specific to the trauma that you're going through, because again, every level of trauma is very different. And some levels of trauma are so deep. I have been, like I mentioned to you guys earlier, in a couple of episodes ago, I've been like constantly recently reading lots of books. Just I've been on this quest for books and knowledge. So I'm just reading and reading and reading. One thing that I have consistently noticed in every book that I have read so far this year is the theme of healing with the traumas that these women have endured, and these people have endured, because I think in specifically You Are Your Best Thing by Tarana Burke and Brene Brown. I cannot tell you how raw and transparent people were in laying out their trauma that they had endured. And it was so varied. I mean, from abuse, sexually, verbally, to just so many different things. And many people took a lot of different courses and routes in order for them to help heal. And even one person mentioned this letter that they wrote for the book was their form of being able to heal it and close the door. You have to figure out what works for you in regards to being able to heal it and close the door. And whatever that looks like, as long as that makes you feel comfortable and feel like that you can move forward, it's the right thing. It really is. Because only you know what you need to be able to move forward. I mean, the trauma that I described in regards to my speech and stuff like that, for me, that is something that I carry with myself, where I always feel like I have to be pleasing when I talk. But I have forgiven that person, that teacher who initiated that trauma in me, because I did that by making sure that I superseded every one of her expectations, so that I would never feel like I don't have to worry about it. Like, your words are irrelevant because I graduated from high school. I actually graduated in the top 10% of my class and was one of who's of American college students, high school students, excuse me. And then I graduated from college. I have 2 degrees. So I don't really feel like, my life mirrored her instance. Her ignorance, her words had the opposite effect. They just motivated me to make sure that I exceeded and that I was better. That was the fire that I needed to be the best person I was. When I think about other traumas that I have gone through, they have taken much more different routes. And in order for me to heal, some I've healed and closed. And I'm not necessarily going to say healed. I'm going to say close the door and move past from. So maybe healed is the appropriate word. I did some through therapy. And then some of that I did by writing it out and journaling and giving myself permission to talk to the person I was back then and forgive myself. One example that I had done was I wrote a letter to my younger self, detailing all of the things that we had endured and how there was nothing that we could have done to change those times, but how grateful we are going to be because we kept persevering through, and talking about getting the help or putting words to our pain so that we can move forward. For me, that was healing. But again, for you, that could look something different. All I'm trying to say is that you have to invest in healing your trauma. Whatever that may look like, you must do that. So that may look like writing a letter. That could be making a video to yourself. There are many different things. I've tried many different ways, but you have to be ready to try, because you deserve to remove that part of yourself that is in pain away. So like I said, you've identified it. You've decided whether or not you need therapy. You've given closure. or you've taken the steps to begin giving yourself closure, to begin moving past from it, then you have to decide how you are going to hold yourself accountable to continuously not allowing this trauma to come back into you. Because see, that's really where the work begins. That's where I was saying how, kind of relating it back to how I got started about the voices. I think a lot of times, we make these initial steps to try to deal with our trauma, try to move past it, try to do the things that we feel are necessary for us in order to get through it. And that's great. You do that work. But we forget that the work is always ongoing, because the world doesn't know that you are what you're triggered by. So you are constantly in situations where you may be triggered, because nobody knows, again, what you're going through. It's not like we walk around wearing signs like I'm traumatized from this, this, and this. Nobody knows that. So you start to deal with triggers coming at you. And you have to ask yourself, when you are getting ready to put that closure in, that healing in, what are you going to do to hold yourself accountable to being able to make sure that you stay on top of healing that healed trauma? So for myself, one thing that I have done, and I think now when I was preparing notes for this episode, I thought about it in depth. I have really been on a self-awareness journey for quite some time. And I think my self-awareness journey, if I think about it, began like in my early 20s and has evolved up into this time where I am right now. And I think a lot of that was because at that point in time, I was very focused on healing myself so that I could be pleasing to other people, because I was feeling like my traumas and my pain were holding me back from having the type of relationships that I wanted. So I have, just full disclosure, I have been on that journey for a while. But the trick is, when I was younger, I was doing the work initially, but full disclosure, I got lazy and I fell off. I got caught up. I forgot about that this is a 365 day goal. And I allowed myself to get caught back up in just living. And I know that probably sounds crazy, but it's true. You get caught back up in the cycle of life. You get more focused with the friends, the family, and everything else, and you forget about yourself. This time where I'm at in my life, I would say entering into the 40s. And now as I even get ready possibly to start going, I'm in my getting my really later 40s, almost in the 50s. I feel like now it is a much different journey, because I am more aware of the fact that I have to stay on this all the time. I have to do the work every day. I have to guard my energy. Like I've told you, I have to cultivate my content. I have to be very honest and loving and transparent in my interactions with people, because now I have noticed that when I am triggered, I am less likely to try to sweep it under the rug, and I am more likely to try to deal with it directly with that person, because I realize they don't know that I'm triggered, but I'm triggered, and I need to explain to them why that I'm triggered so that they will never do this again, not just to me, but to someone else who is just like me. Because again, we are all going through life with triggers, and I want to be able to cultivate that space with people where they can speak to me honestly and I can speak with them honestly, so that we can really have true, clear understanding. And see, that's where I wasn't on that mindset back then. And I think a lot of people, we try self-help books, we try doing all these things, and it's great for a little while, but then we allow life to kind of crumb back in and creep up, and we forget about everything that we've been reading, learning, and journaling, and we get a little bit lazy. I mean, let's keep it honest. We get a little lazy, we get a little bit off focus, and we wind up in situations where we're not following through. So one of the main things, the thing that you must truly remember while you are on the journey to healing yourself, on healing your trauma, so that you don't inflict it on yourself and other people, is that you must be the person to realize that your trauma, while you are dealing with it and facing it, must be dealt with and faced 365 days a year, moving forward because there you will always potentially be triggered and you don't want to go back there. And if you are triggered, but you are working on it constantly and you are aware of that, then you will be able to be clear about why you're triggered. You'll be able to be clear on how you would want to explain to someone why you feel the way that you do, so that you can cultivate an honest, true conversation, honest, true change in behavior. And so that you don't wind up transferring that back to someone else. Because see, that's what happens. When we don't deal with our stuff, we transfer it to other people. And it's not intentional. A lot of times it's very unintentional. But we wind up allowing our hangups to create judgments, and then we carry those judgments into other people, and we talk about other people, and we do things that are negative, and the only person that you wind up hurting is not that person. You wind up hurting yourself, and then you wind up actually even tying in other people into it, because unfortunately sometimes when everybody is in that situation where they haven't dealt with their stuff, it can become like a group of people talking about traumas, talking about people, and it just becomes toxic, and you don't want to keep that type of energy going. So it is very important for you to be able to deal with yourself from a place of honesty and truth as when it comes to your traumas, so that you don't wind up being that person. Because like I said, there's a lot of women out here who don't like other women, but it's not based on anything except for trauma, because hurt people hurt other people. And at some point in time, somebody's got to make the decision to deal with their hurt and then understand how to deal with other people as they are navigating through that hurt and healing. Because yes, you can heal, you can put it up in a nice little bow, but you have to remember the world is still going to be the world, and other people are still going to be other people, and you are likely to be triggered because these other people don't know what you've been through. That's one of the reasons why I love creating this space, because this type of space gives an opportunity for people to learn from other people's trauma, so that maybe they don't inflict that trauma themselves. And we start to create this atmosphere of people who are more coming to each other from a place of understanding and learning, versus a place of hurt and judgment and resentments. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. But again, like I said, it's really important, because it all goes back to trauma. And so, yes, it did spark off on a conversation from being able to stymie the voice, but ultimately it's about healing your traumas. It's about healing with yourself. It's as you are sitting with yourself, understanding that, yes, you will sit with yourself, you'll start to do the work, you'll journal and everything, but be ready to commit to this 365 days a year, because that's what it takes. Because you want to make sure that you have a good armor and shield around you to protect you for those moments where you are triggered, because this is your journey. And I don't want to see anyone thrown off the path of their journey because they got a little too comfortable with their healing and they thought they were good, when they didn't recognize the fact that you are constantly have to be in a cycle of healing. So I want to make sure that you know that you are not alone, because I am right in that cycle with you. And I will continuously make sure that we are sharing and supporting each other on this journey, because that's what living the well done life is. It's a constantly growing, evolving, healing journey. So that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about this week. I wanted to talk to you about trauma. I wanted to talk to you about dealing with yourselves and dealing with that trauma so that we can heal each other. I'm definitely going to make sure that I put some list out in the show notes and link the previous episodes so you can kind of see the progression till we got to this point. But I'm definitely, like I said, sending each of you prayers of peace, prayers of prosperity, prayers of healing. Because for those of you that are, take the step and start to really deal with what you're triggered by, to deal with your trauma, please know that you're not alone. And just know that it's not going to be easy, but the work is so worth it, because you will feel so much lighter when you don't carry trauma so much. And you will also notice that you are not as potentially you're not as focused on judging other people, because when you recognize your own trauma, you can recognize that other people have gone through trauma too, and you start to look at life and people a little bit differently, and it can free you from some things that are weighing you down. So I want you to understand and experience that, because that is a critical part of being able to live the well done life, and it's a critical part to being able to accept in this unending abundance that's trying to come to you, because you can't accept unending abundance when you're holding on to past pain. Sometimes something's got to give. So you got to figure out which one matters the most to you, and what you're willing to give up, what you're willing to heal, what you're willing to reveal, so that you can be the best versions of yourself. So thank you for listening this week. I really appreciate you guys. Like I said, I'll have information in the show notes. I'm going to make sure that I link everything in that, kind of what I talked about, so you at least have some reference points. I will definitely be back next week. I'm really excited. We're kind of gearing up now toward having 2 amazing guests come. I'm very excited. Little self-care, little good, honest conversation around a subject that is very passionate to my heart. So please look out for them. Please don't hesitate to reach out and connect with me. You can reach out to me at thewelldonelife@gmail.com, as well as you can connect with me on social media on Instagram at the Well Done Life Podcast, or at Pamela L. Davis, which are my handles, and I'll have everything in the show note. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and review. I love your reviews. I appreciate your feedback. I want to thank you guys. I'm starting to see more of them come in, and it just makes me feel so good to know that I'm adding value. That's really what this is about for me. I want to make sure that I'm giving you information and things to think about that will help you grow, because we need each other. And I want to see each of us sharing and growing together. So have an awesome rest of the weekend and rest of the week. I will talk to you guys soon. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.